You know the old saying, right? We've been living that here in the past couple of months, huh? You know the old saying, when it rains, it pours. Anybody get a little sprinkling last night? Ha ha! Oh, we had some fireworks, the natural kind, last night. We had a lot of heavy rain after several months of being worried about not enough rain. I know it's been on the minds of a lot of people. This lack of rain, we've been getting our share. Last week I was coming in last week and I came across a flooded road and I debated going through or not because of course they tell you don't cross through a flooded road, and I didn't, and it took me a little while longer to get here. I was meeting Father Angel last week for lunch before he did those baptisms. Are they here? They're there. Arenza and Gerardo, huh? Got baptized. Father Angel came up to baptize him last week, and I made him wait half an hour as I was trying to find my way around the flooded road. Huh? When it rains, it pours, and it's easy for us sisters and brothers as we stare out of our windows. I hope everybody had windows in that situation, and more importantly, a roof, to look out and look at this power of nature and think we're seeing the power of God there. Or are we? Or are we? We hear in this first reading, right, from 1 Kings, we hear about this great prophet Elijah. We just heard about prophet Elijah last week at the Transfiguration, right, who along with Moses showed up at Mount Tabor with Jesus at the Transfiguration. Elijah showed up. We hear about Elijah today after defeating in very dramatic fashion those 450 prophets of Baal and getting on the wrong side of the evil King Ahab and the even more evil Queen Jezebel, on the run, and finding himself on Mount Horeb, and God telling him to keep watch. He was going to speak to a prophet Elijah. And so prophet Elijah waited and listened. And there was a strong and heavy wind rending the mountains. Huh? But God was not in the wind. There was an earthquake. God wasn't in the earthquake. There was a great fire. But God wasn't in the fire. No. God spoke after the fire in a tiny, whispering wind. And God spoke to prophet Elijah. And unveiled to prophet Elijah the next step in his ministry. We hear how our Lord, after feeding the 5,000, set his disciples out on a boat with Peter in command, fishing all through the night, fishing through the great storm. The boat in the storm being tossed around by the waves, so the wind was against it. And how our Lord, in the midst of the storm, several miles offshore, walks on the water. Jesus, in his divine nature, demonstrating being God, his complete authority over nature. And Peter gets out of the boat and sinks. And yet, getting into the boat, the bark of Peter the winds died down. Of course, we call the church herself, right? We call that the bark of Peter. Bark is a fancy way of saying boat. Sailing through space and time. Sailing on to salvation with Peter at the helm. There's a lot more than thunderstorms and fires. We hear about the big fire on Oahu. Big fires much of the year in Canada, sending smoke around all across the Northeast. We see the storms in our church, how much consternation there was in the synod on the Amazon, and how much already consternation we're hearing about the synod on synodality. We look at our country, we see all sorts of storms. We see storms of the past, we see storm clouds gathering on the future. And yet, we know that we are called to listen to Jesus. And we're not going to hear him in the storms. And we're not going to hear him in the earthquakes. And we're not going to hear him in the fires. We are called, sisters and brothers, to listen to Jesus. He gives us his church. He gives us this bark of Peter, as we say, this boat of Peter, Holy Mother Church, to help us to listen more attentively. And listening more attentively, hear him tell us about the adoption, the glory, the covenants, the giving of the law, the worship, and the promises. To listen better to the patriarchs. To hear what God proclaims, for God proclaims peace. We are called to listen for that tiny, whispering sound of Jesus speaking deep into our hearts. And hearing that, turn and do him homage, saying, as the disciples did, as we do, truly, you are the Son of God. Praise be Jesus Christ.